Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about Q Island by Russell James. This is published by Sam Hain Publishing. As of this video, it's just been released, early July, so you don't have to pre-order this one. You can go out and pick it up or order it. Q Island is the story of a prehistoric virus that's released in modern-day Long Island. And it's a virus that turns people psychotic. They go on murder sprees. And the government, of course, quarantines Long Island. Shuts everything down. I think that's where the Q comes from. Quarantine. Look at that. See how it all just clicks? But you've got Melanie Bailey, who lives on Long Island with her autistic son, Aiden, and they just, you know, they're trying to survive. They want to get off the island. You've got Dr. Samuel Bradshaw, who used to be, I guess, an expert in polio, trying to find a cure, and he's trapped on the island. But he goes to work with the CDC trying to find a way to stop this virus. And you've got Tamara Drake, who's a nurse and a friend of Melanie's. And, you know, she's trying to do what she can. Jimmy Wade, who is just a punk criminal. Not even a good criminal, just a punk who takes advantage of what's going on to rise to the top of a criminal empire. And just all this going on quarantined Long Island, and that's the gist of the story, with a few more things going on that I'll get to. But it's a really good story, a very well told tale, and right off the bat, I'm just going to say, while I was reading this, I couldn't help but think of The Stand by Stephen King, or Swan Song by Robert R. McCammon. It's very similar, I think, but it's more of a microcosmic version of those stories, where those are both very sprawling and epic. This, again, just takes place on Long Island. It's more compact, but you have the same good versus evil dynamic that's going on. You have Jimmy Wade's rise to power as a bad guy, and how much do I say about Jimmy Wade? Something happens because of the virus to Jimmy, and it which facilitates his rise to power, since he is just a loser punk. But you've got him as sort of the pinnacle of evil on the island. And then on the other side, you have, I guess, Aiden would be the other side of that coin. Aiden, the autistic kid. And as far as that character goes, Aiden, I'm not an expert on autism. Basically, anything I know or think I know comes from TV and movies. So I can't say how accurate the portrayal of autism is in this book. It seems accurate to me, based on the limited, I can't even say knowledge, because I'm not sure it is real knowledge that I have from movies and TV. But based on what I've seen in other media, it seems very authentic. And I'm assuming that the author did his research to try to make it as authentic as possible. But anyway, so Aiden is the flip side of Jimmy Wade, a complete innocent, and it's, again, this sort of balance of power and the people caught in the middle and just trying to survive and get off the island and find a cure. And now this virus, it's interesting. It's not a straightforward, like, 28 days later kind of thing that just makes people psychotic. First, you or someone who's infected generally has this sort of burst of clarity, and their mind sort of works at its peak for a short time. For example, the very first victim that we really see is this old woman who used to write poetry, and she's in the hospital because she's sick, and then all of a sudden it seems like she's fine, and she's just busting out the poems, just working at top form, writing beautiful poetry before she crashes and goes psychotic, which is the second stage, I guess. But it's a psychosis with clarity, whereas in, again, 28 Days Later, the rage virus, basically this leads to the whole argument of whether or not the people in 28 Days Later are zombies or not, because the rage virus takes away sort of their free will, and all they can do is kill. In this, these are thinking rageaholics, I guess. The people that are infected, even though they will kill you in a second, or rape you, or whatever, they're biting people and ripping them apart with their bare hands, but they're also using weapons, and they're setting traps, and they still have their faculties. They've just sort of gone completely sociopathic or psychopathic, whichever one, or both. But that's how the virus infects them, except for a couple people who I've already mentioned. The virus has a different effect on them. But the characters are all really nice. Well, they're not all nice. They're all well written, I suppose I should say. Melanie Bailey as the mother of Aiden, the autistic kid, who really her life revolves around her son. And I don't think she complains about it at any point, because she loves her son, and she does what she can for him to make his life easier. Dr. Bradshaw, an older gentleman, probably close to retirement age, who's got his own issues at home with his wife, and just because she has polio and he blames himself. Excuse me. And Tamara Drake and a lot of other characters. And this really is a story of survival, and it's got that Lord of the Flies aspect. We see the how do I put it? We see the people's true nature come out, whether or not they're infected. Melanie and Tamara both live in a gated community, and it becomes a little fortress. And you see, as people become more and more isolated, and the virus, just builds and builds. The government has quarantined the whole island. Nobody's getting off. Nobody's getting on. And the story takes place over a pretty decent period of time. And so you just see people basically boiled down to their base nature. And that makes for some interesting character study. So a lot of elements going on, a lot of stuff in play. The government, wow, just some of the stuff they do. There are quite a few times when people are trying to get off the island, and yeah, the government's not going to let it happen, and they put their own spin for the rest of the world. The government's saying, this is what happened when these infected people tried to get off the island. We had to, we had to do what we had to do. But it's not always infected trying to get off the island. The government's kind of a bad guy in this situation. But it's really, really a great story. And again, I compared it to Swan Song and The Stand. Obviously, a much shorter novel than either one of those massive tomes. And it's much pulpier, I think. Lots of violence and bloodshed. There's some rape in it. But it's really a character-driven story. The incidents with the infected are not few and far between, but it's not a non-stop assault of the infected. It's a very human story, which is one of the strengths of horror, especially well-written horror, of course, that it can be used to really take a look at the human condition. And again, especially this kind of story, it's, again, an apocalypse in microcosm, so we really get to see what people are made of. You know, what would you do in this type of situation? Are you going to help your fellow man? Are you going to isolate yourself? Are you going to take advantage of the situation? This is a story that looks at how people deal with it. You know, Melanie just wants to, Melanie's biggest concern is her son, and he's on medication. I don't remember the name of it, but they're quarantined. There are limited supplies of everything, and you know, her biggest concern is how she's going to get more medicine for her son, how he's going to deal with these huge changes in his routine, because routine is incredibly important to him. And then a few other things I won't give away cause concern for Melanie and Aiden. You know, Tamara, being a nurse, becomes the Florence Nightingale of their gated community. This gentleman, I don't remember his name, one of the guys that lives in the community, basically takes it over. He's the one that essentially saves the people in this community, fortifies the place. It seems like he stepped up and is doing a good thing, but he's pretty much just on a power trip. He thinks everybody needs to pull their own weight, which is why he's essentially forcing Tamara. Not that Tamara wouldn't want to help people anyway, but this guy is forcing her to be the medical professional here. And then Dr. Bradshaw, working with the CDC, he's filled with guilt over what happened with his wife because he thinks she got polio because of him. And so he's trying to figure things out. And the government and the CDC have taken over JFK. And they're ostensibly trying to find a cure. But there seems to be other stuff going on there too. So there's all sorts of just layers upon layers of the story. I think this is the first thing I've read by Russell James. I have a few of his books. And it's quite well written. Very straightforward as far as the writing style goes. Really just I want to say fun, compelling story, I suppose. I mean, I enjoyed it very much. I like a lot of the stuff that goes on. Of course, as I said, the characters are really good. And it really, again, what would you do? How would you react to this sort of thing? And as time goes on, are you going to step up or fall apart? You know, a lot of people, even people who aren't infected by the virus, just sort of give up. Actually, I don't think anybody infected by the virus gives up, because they're all just crazy and want to kill people. So that's a very sort of rambling review. With my new work schedule, I don't always get to record these as soon as I've finished reading the book. And unfortunately, I think I finished this a couple of weeks ago. And I've read a few things since then. So I'm trying to keep everything straight in my head and give it to you but I definitely recommend this. I'll get to my rating here, and I had some trouble coming up with what to draw for my rating on this one, so I decided to try to be a little clever. So what I did was I gave this book 4 out of 5 prehistoric viruses. See, they've got little tiger striped loincloths and little clubs because they're prehistoric. 4 out of 5 prehistoric viruses. And I actually looked up different viruses, so that's my rendition, as accurate as possible, of an actual virus. I don't remember what it is, what the virus is, but there you go. So 4 out of 5 prehistoric viruses. Really good book. Not a perfect novel, so I didn't give it 5 out of 5, but I highly recommend it. I maybe even could have gone 4.5 out of 5, but I went with 4 out of 5. What are you gonna do? So I say pick it up. It's a really good story. A lot of stuff going on. Great characters. I left quite a bit out. Some of the really, really interesting aspects of the story I left out because I want them to be a surprise. There are some twists and turns and things that happen. Probably what I left out is what most reminded me of The Stand and Swan Song. So I don't know if that tells you anything or not. But come on, it's Q Island by Russell James. I'm really surprised at how much I enjoyed this. Not anything against Russell James, just seemed like it was going to be another zombie type story. But it really, again, it's not zombies at all, and it goes above and beyond your typical sort of rage virus kind of story. Just really, it's good stuff. So pick it up. It's available now. I've lost track of what I was going to say, so if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. If you spoil something, don't put a spoiler warning. I'll just delete your comment. I know what I meant to say. I will have links for you to pick up the book in the description below. I'll have one for Amazon. I'll have one for Sam Hain to try to make it easy for you, so you can just click and buy and read. So those will be in the description, a couple of links for the book. Please like, share, and subscribe. And that's it for this episode of the Low Budget Review Show. Until next time, read more books.